Hey, everybody. Today we did something a little bit different, brought in a guest, and just want to make clear that the positions of my guests don't necessarily reflect my own. And number two, since I did all the editing on my own on the fly, there's some things are not exactly how I'd like, but going to be working on that. I hope you enjoy. All right. Welcome to the Mind Crime. Today we're going to do something different. Today I have a guest. His name is Tim Kenny. Tim has a BA in history from, what was it, Buffalo State?
That's right. Go Bengals.
Buffalo State, go Bengals. So Tim knows a lot about history, and I think he's got some things he wants to say about what's going on, specifically about the election. So Tim, tell me what you think about the election. What's going on?
The election was stolen by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has ceased to be a legit political party in the United States. It is now an organization of sedition.
An organization of sedition. So give me an idea what you mean by that. I mean, people have different ideas of what sedition means.
Oh, right. Well, sedition means when you want to destroy the country that you're living in. Okay. In other words, they want to make the United States into a left-wing or fascist nation. Now, people often misconstrue fascism with right wing.
Exactly.
It's not true. That's
okay.
bull. That's bull. Okay. When Stalin and Hitler were fighting each other, they weren't fighting over ideological causes because they believed in the same things. They just called it a different name.
And by that, you mean like they both believed in like authoritarianism? I mean, what do you mean by that?
Authoritarianism, centralization of the economy under the control of the government.
Okay.
Okay. Regulation of every industry.
All right. So, okay. I mean, I definitely see that with the communist setup.
Yes.
So a lot of times people don't think of Nazis as being like socialists, right? Because there's a lot of talk right now about socialism.
But the crazy thing about that, Nazi, what it was the name of the party?
Yeah, I know. There's socialists right there in the party.
Socialist Democratic, the National Socialist German Workers' Party.
Right.
You couldn't be more communist than that. Okay? That's right. Exactly what they purported themselves to stand for. But fascism is a little bit different than communism. From the standpoint of fascism is centralized control, but it is divided among the industries. Like there's a government head for each industry. You know what I mean? So they do practice capitalism in the same sense that we do.
Right.
All right, as far as their international dealings and all that. But as far as government control of everything, government control of the personal life, the way they separate the children from their parents, that was what the Hitler Youth and the League of German Maidens was all about.
Absolutely.
Okay, it was all about separating and convincing them that the Nazis were God.
So, but now let's get back to this idea of the fascism versus socialism or communism, right? Which is really, we're talking about Stalin.
Socialism is communism watered down.
Interesting. I mean, I think of communism as more of a government, a government style, whereas I think socialism is more of an economic aspect of a government.
The truth is, the communist government was supposed to be an interim situation. Okay, if you read Das Kapital, he talks all about that.
Wait. What's Das Kapital?
Das Kapital is the book that Karl Marx wrote.
All right.
In the 1840s.
All right.
It was the basis for the communist movements. It was basis for the commune they had in Paris. It was a basis for the Bolshevik revolution. All right, and basically the ultimate, the communist takeover of the Soviet Union or Russia.
All right. So what you're saying is that if we look at the Nazis, we look at communist Soviet Union under Joe Stalin, they're pretty much the same thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me continue because I think I'm cutting you off a little bit too much here, Tim. So tell me, how do you see the parallels? What are you seeing? Because we've heard a lot of stuff about Trump, and now it's Trumpism, right? Because Trump is, may be going away. It looks like he's going to be going away.
Not if we can help it.
So we see Trump moving and morphing into Trumpism that must be defeated. But, you know, it's always getting hit that, oh, you guys are fascists. You have Antifa out there, the anti-fascists. How exactly do we see parallels between, I don't know, let's say 1920s, 1930s Europe, and what we're seeing here?
Yeah, Germany. I mean, the United States is actually kind of a quasi situation. In other words, there's a lot of similarities between the era of the provisional government in Russia after the initial abdication of Nicholas. You had the two revolutions in 1917. You had the February-March Revolution, which is that was when they forced Tsar Nicholas to abdicate, and they took him and his family into captivity.
All right.
Okay. Then in the fall, the October-November Revolution, and the reason they call them that is because the Russians at the time used the Gregorian calendar, and so they were in a different month because the calendars are a few days off. In the October-November Revolution, that was the Communist Revolution. That was where Lenin took over.
All right.
Now, that led to a civil war in Russia that lasted until 1921.
Right.
All right. And in that era, there was still very large blocks of white Russians, people that were fighting to retain the monarchy, even to possibly put Nicholas back on the throne.
Wait, what do we mean by white Russians? I don't think you mean like white as in looking white?
No, they were referred to as the white Russians versus the red Russians.
Ah, okay.
I'm not sure exactly why they called them white. I've never learned that.
I don't think it's skin color.
No. It just has to do with, I think that was because that was the color of the Russian flag when the Romanovs were in charge of Russia.
All right. So let's get back to how do we see this as parallel to today?
Well, the parallels are, you look around. Okay, look at what they're doing. All right. One of the things that they've done is they've used COVID as an excuse for trampling on our rights.
Okay, who's they? The Democrat Party?
The government in general, but the Democrats particularly because they have the majority in Congress.
All right.
And they have been able to basically, and also the state governments, like the government in New York. Andrew Cuomo has far exceeded his authority in what he's done.
You know, yesterday, we're doing this Thanksgiving 2020, by the way. Yesterday, Cuomo lost in court. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't. What happened?
Yeah, so Cuomo lost in court. The church, I think it was the Catholic Church, and I'm not sure if it was the Hasidic Jews. I don't know how organized they are, but apparently they sued for getting the limits removed from their religious services,
so they could restore so people could go to church again. See, this is one of the things I'm talking about. Is what the communists need to do is they need to tear down the institutions of any country,
right,
that they wish to take over.
Right.
Now, the United States, it's been very hard for them to do that because of our prosperity, because the people here don't feel that the government is doing such a bad job.
That's absolutely right.
And the reality of the matter is, prior to COVID, Trump was a raging success as president. He was one of the best presidents ever. All right. Trump said it himself, but it was true.
And if Trump says it, you know it's true.
Well, the point was, it was true. Okay. and this is the thing that blows me away. You look at the minorities. They all hate the man. They despise him.
You're talking about Trump.
Yeah. He never did anything wrong to them, but they despise him. Why? Because the Democratic Party told them to.
Now, but there's been a big shift. You see, this is what I've been looking at. I see big shifts happening within the Democrat and Republican Party. I mean, it's obvious. Did you see any of the statistics?
Part of I'll tell you this much. I had a discussion with my friend Leo up in Buffalo. All right. And Leo is an extremely astute human being. He knows what he's talking about. Okay. And one of the things that he talked about was this. All right. The fact is, if you look at what's going on right now, the Republicans are in on it.
So you mean like your establishment Republican?
Yes. See, what the thing is, Trump was somebody that nobody in Washington wanted to be in the White House. Nobody.
I completely agree.
Not Mitch McConnell, not anybody.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember at the time it was Paul Ryan at the House?
Exactly. Okay, and prior to that, it was, they ran John McCain in 2008. He's a Republican in name only. All right, he's a rhino for sure.
Wait. Did you forget about Romney?
I was just going to go on to that. We know what Romney is. Romney might as well just be a Democrat.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
All right, because Romney don't stand for anything that the Republicans stand for. Remember, Obamacare was based on Romney care.
I remember that. But I mean, I think he gets hit pretty hard from the right. And I think a lot of it is that he didn't want to play with Trump. I mean, it's obvious that he and Trump, they don't really get along very well, right? I mean, I know they had that lunch to see whether he was going to be Secretary of State or something. Wasn't it something like that?
Well, Trump did consider bringing Romney into the fold, but then he realized, this guy doesn't think like me. This guy doesn't, Romney has a different agenda, and it isn't for the good of the American people.
See, but my thing is, did he vote? And I don't know his voting record well enough, but did he go along with the Republican agenda for the most part? Which, by the way, seems to be not much, right?
Well, as a rule, what you need to remember about all Republicans, even from rhinos right to the furthest right-wing Republican you could imagine. All right, the fact of the matter is, the Republican Party doesn't have that much variance from one side to the other. There are more liberal Republicans, and those liberal Republicans are the ones that will tolerate divorce or will tolerate abortion.
Okay.
Are softer on the anti-drug laws and things like that.
Yeah, but now you're talking like
they're socially liberal.
Yeah, you're talking about the social issues. You're not necessarily talking about like the whole Republican platform.
No. But what I'm saying is that the leftist Republicans. There is a leftist end of the Republican Party, and I would put Romney firmly in that.
I think that's fair to say. If you're looking at the spectrum from
overall, the leftists, even the Republicans, understand that in order for capitalism to work, you need to use conservative policies. Okay, because conservative policies lower taxes, stimulate business. Reagan's quote unquote voodoo economy was actually legitimate.
Right.
Trickle down does work.
Yeah, I know there's gonna be a lot of people that don't agree with that.
They don't agree with that, but because they've been conditioned to not agree with that. The fact of the matter is, I live in a homeless shelter. I'm surrounded by black men.
Right.
Okay. And I've had conversations with a lot of them.
Yeah.
All right. And in many cases, as time went on, I've had more of them come to me in private and say, Tim, I agree with what you're saying. I just can't say it in front of my friends.
Right. So what we're talking about in private means not in front of other people. By the way,
right? Not in front of what I'm saying is they are afraid to voice conservative views in front of their own because they'll get demolished for it.
Right. So this is going back to a point I was going to make, and that if you look at the statistics of this past 2020 election, if you consider it over, not that matters.
I don't.
but the it's amazing. There's been this shift, right? I think there's going to be a huge realignment, and the realignment is happening. You see a lot of people that are, I hate the word minorities. I use it, but there are individual groups that are minorities of the population. But there was a lot more people that more black people, probably the most that's voted for Republican.
That's why I don't believe it. Oh, no. There were a lot that went and voted for Trump. This is true.
This is a difference.
One of the things that they tried to say, one of the things the Democrats tried to cram down our throats, and that was one of the first signs that I knew this election was false. I knew this election was bogus. It was illegitimate. And the reason being, they came out and said that more blacks voted in this election than any election in past.
I see. Now, I haven't caught that.
I don't believe that for a second. Because I live in a homeless shelter with 140 men, okay? And about 130 of those men are black.
Yeah, and
the vast majority of them do not vote. They only voted for Obama because he was a black man. They didn't take any consideration of his politics. They voted for him because he's a black man. Now, don't get me wrong. If I was a black man, I'd have a hard time not voting for another black man who's running for president.
Look, yeah, there's...
Especially because the Democrats have conditioned them to believe that Whitey owes them. Okay? It's just a fact. The average black person, even the average black person, has been so inundated with that, to be honest with you, excuse my French, bullshit philosophy.
Right.
Okay? That, the Republicans are against them and the Democrats are for them. It's nonsense.
And I completely agree.
The fact of the matter is, the Republican Party was the party that was formed to end slavery. Specifically, that was the central issue upon which the Republican Party was founded. And the first successful Republican candidate for president was Abraham Lincoln.
Now, you know that people say that.
Now, when Abraham Lincoln successfully prosecuted the Civil War, they had the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. 14th Amendment ended slavery. 15th Amendment granted full rights to black citizens.
All right.
Former slaves. Okay? Now, men at least at the time. Women didn't get the vote till 19.
Right.
All right? But the truth of the matter is, the Republicans did that. And you know how many Democrats voted for that?
I don't know.
0. Not one for either amendment. Not one.
Yeah, but what years are we talking? Wait. What years are we talking about?
We're talking the 1860s.
So there's this idea that the parties have flipped. All those Southern Democrats are now the racist Southern Republicans.
No, opposite. What actually happened was this. In 1964, when President Kennedy was shot, President Kennedy, at that time, up to that time, the Democratic Party had a conservative wing and a liberal wing.
Right.
The conservative wing was headed by John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Yeah.
When he got killed, his vice president was the head of the southern wing of the Democratic Party,
Lyndon
Baines Johnson. Remember, Johnson and Kennedy hated each other.
Right.
Okay? There was no love between them at all.
Right.
Johnson was practically doing a jig when he took the presidency from Kennedy. Okay? Don't think that wasn't a coup d'etat, because it was.
Well,
There's
I don't
a
know.
reason they're covering everything up. Okay? There's a reason they had a patsy like Oswald. There's a reason. Okay.
Oswald, he was an innocent guy, right?
No, he wasn't. Oswald wasn't innocent by any means. He was involved.
Right. We're getting into conspiracy stuff. Well, we're actually, you know what? We're actually not getting into conspiracy.
No, we don't need to move. I'm just.
Let's stay out of the I agree. That's my stupidity. Go on.
But anyway, what I'm saying is this. Okay, following the death of President Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson took over the White House. Now, Lyndon Johnson was a very canny political operator. All right. They used to refer to him when he was in the Senate as, when you were getting filibuster, he'd come and filibuster you in person. You know what I mean? And he'd give you what they called the Johnson treatment.
Right.
Okay. And that's what gave him the power he had in the Democratic Party.
All right.
Now, following President Kennedy's death, the southern wing of the Democratic Party took over.
Okay.
Johnson understood that the Democratic Party, according to the people, was on the wrong side of history.
Okay. So
Johnson
what you're
engineered this supposed flip. Okay, where basically what Johnson did was Johnson got the Republicans to break the Democratic filibuster of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Remember, the Democrats were filibustering that. They were doing everything they could to stop it.
Yes.
Okay, they weren't for civil rights; they were against civil rights.
Right, because at this point, they're still considered the racist Democrats.
Remember George Wallace, and he said this in 1968: segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. This is what the man said, and he was a Democratic governor of Alabama. And at the time was a candidate for the presidency.
Right.
Okay. Now, when Malcolm X was killed, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Dr. King, when they were all killed, okay, these were men who didn't compromise their principles.
Okay.
All right. Dr. King was a Republican. Okay.
Yeah.
People failed to remember that. Or they try to say, well, that was before the party switched.
Right, because it makes total, I mean, it makes total sense given the idea of the Republicans.
Was the Democrats understood that the leadership of the civil rights movements, okay, Medgar Evers, Evers was already dead by the time Johnson became president. He had gotten killed the year before. But as far as Malcolm X and Dr. King, okay, these gentlemen were powerful.
Right.
But they were men of principle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I knew a guy in Buffalo named Charlie Kyle.
Yeah.
Charlie Kyle's an associate professor at the University of Buffalo. He teaches African music theory.
Okay.
He's a great drummer. Plays in a band called the Outer Circle Orchestra.
All right.
All right. Used to see him all the time. They never play a song the same way twice, but they're freaking brilliant.
Right.
All right. But Charlie was an interesting guy because Charlie knew Dr. King and Malcolm X personally.
Oh, yeah?
When Malcolm X did the Hajj, when he did his pilgrimage, he went with him.
That's very cool.
Okay. Now, I asked him what he thought about things. He goes, Tim, everything you see out there, he goes, the Al Sharptons, he says, they're all government plants.
Yeah, now we're getting into conspiracy.
No, this is true. This is documented. All right. It's absolute fact.
So wait, you're telling me Al Sharpton is a government plant?
In 1968, no, a Democratic plant.
Yeah, now that's...
In 1968, the Democratic Party had arranged a meeting. Okay, this was after the death of Robert Kennedy. Okay, and they arranged a meeting, and basically, what they told Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and their ilk. Yeah. Okay, you work for us now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to pay you. We're not going to arrest you, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
How many times has Al Sharpton incited riots, made people start fires and things like that? Remember the bookstore where he yelled, burn them out, burn them out. And what did they do? Threw Molotov cocktails in the bookstore and set it on fire.
You see, I don't.
Dude, look, that's incitement to riot.
That
should get you in jail for the rest of your life. Nothing happened to Sharpton. Nothing.
Yeah, well, nothing happens to most of these people, right? Did Hillary Clinton? Did anyone lock her up? Right? This is talk. Did anyone lock up Hillary Clinton? No, that stuff never happens.
Not yet.
Yeah, well, they're talking about, we're going to lock up Trump afterwards. Nobody's going to lock up Trump.
You can't lock up Trump. He hasn't done anything wrong.
He's going to pardon himself anyway. You watch.
Well, you can't lock him up. He didn't do anything wrong. He can't pardon himself. They haven't come across with that yet. The Democrats will come up with that, though.
Well, that's what they're saying. They're saying it's a big possibility that Trump could.
They're making a big deal. He pardoned General Flynn. What? You didn't see that coming?
I know exactly.
I mean, it's far better than Bill Clinton pardoning Rich, who is a criminal. Right. A known criminal, and he punished him, or he pardoned him.
So stepping back, they were talking about the Supreme Court now with Amy Coney Barrett. They ruled in favor of the Catholic Church and the synagogues, so that they can now have their services. I'm not really sure the details, like the numbers that they're allowed to have.
The thing is, Matt, that's one of the crucial things right here. Is one thing that has always made America different than every other country is we have the Puritan ethic.
All right, go on. Okay. The Puritan ethic.
The Puritan ethic started out in New England. Now, there were bad sides
to it. Wait, I'm going to mention again. Today's Thanksgiving.
Right.
Go on.
Okay, the same people, the Puritans. Okay, the Pilgrims, the same people, exactly. All right. Now, the Pilgrims were really down for religious freedom. Yeah. As long as you practice their religion. Yeah. They were good with it. Okay.
That's right.
All right. Now, the interesting thing is, when they, it all began there.
Okay.
Okay. America's ethic began there. Okay. Because whether you disagree with the Pilgrims or the Puritans in their religious belief, it still permeates the central core of America.
Yeah. I mean,
look at it this way. When our armies go overseas and fight a war, do our soldiers rape and pillage?
Not usually.
Not ever. Okay? Because you know what happens?
Well, you remember all that Vietnam talk?
Yes,
that,
and what happened to Callie? What happened to him? They threw his ass in jail.
As it should be, right?
As it should be. He killed over 200 innocent Vietnamese people. He murdered them.
Right. Look, okay. I mean, I joked about it. I shouldn't joke about it. Absolutely. I 100% believe in our soldiers. I worked for the Army. for the most part, the ethics, and you'll see it if you're in the culture, that's a very ethically strong culture.
That's right.
Which is part of why you see
As
some,
it should be.
but that's part of why you see some of the pushback. Have you seen some of the stuff with James Mattis with Trump lately, and the idea that we need to get rid of America first and we need to look bigger? And there's some people talking about, maybe China controls General Mattis. I don't know. But he was, Trump was a big mad dog guy. What do you think about that? What do you think about the leadership?
The reality is all the nonsense that they've been spouting about Trump being in with Putin and Trump being in with the Chinese, it's utter nonsense.
Yeah.
The last person that the Chinese wanted to see reelected was Donald J. Trump. Okay?
No way.
Biden is their boy. They want Biden. Why? Because it weakens the United States. Because the Chinese see themselves. They look at the 21st century. I've read stuff that their leadership has written.
You talking about like, the unrestricted warfare, that kind of stuff?
No. What I'm talking about is this. China sees themselves as the next great world power.
100%.
Okay? They see themselves supplanting the United States much as we did the British Empire.
Absolutely.
Okay? Now, we don't want that to happen, because if it does, then the world becomes communist. Okay?
Absolutely.
And the reality is, this COVID epidemic has given us a taste of what the government can do if it wants to, if we allow it to. Because remember one thing.
Yeah.
The basis for the United States is the U.S. Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You look at that document, it's an amazing document.
Yep.
All right? And it was written by men who understood. They didn't know what the future would be.
Right.
So they set the document up so that it could be amended.
Right.
Okay? And it has been.
Yeah, it's a living document.
29 times, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact of the matter is, the Democrats look at our Constitution as this quaint little holdover from 1780s.
Yeah.
Okay? They don't consider it important.
Right. Well, I mean,
right?
they do when it suits them.
They look at it as a quaint document. Of course, when it protects them from, legitimate scrutiny and legitimate questions, then they're happy with it. But the point is, what they want to do is the United States Constitution differs from constitutions all over the world in one way. And
What's that?
And it's a crucial way.
What's that?
The United States Constitution dictates what the powers of the government are,
right?
And it limits them. In other words, our rights are not granted to us by the government. Our rights are given to us by God.
Yeah, that is a big distinction. I agree from everything I understand.
The government, the Constitution gives the government the ability to occasionally, or I should say, it gives the government the ability to intrude on our rights, but only as much as we allow.
Right. So you wanted to tie this to the COVID situation.
Well, in the COVID situation, because of the emergent nature of it, because people were afraid.
Yeah.
Okay. What has the government been able to do? They shut down the churches. Did you ever think you would see a day, growing up a Catholic, did you ever think you would see the day when the Catholic Church stopped having Mass every day?
Yeah, I know. It's really quite remarkable.
Okay. The Roman Catholic Church been around 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Had a Mass every day through the Black Plague, through everything.
Yeah. I mean, and I think they were still doing it themselves. Probably the priests were getting together.
Well, my point is that a bunch of priests getting together doesn't help things. Okay?
Yeah.
When people in this country, Americans, we often seek solace in the church.
Right.
Okay. And now people are denied that. Okay. And why? All right. Another thing they do, divide the parents from the children.
Right. Okay. So you're going to suggest who's doing that?
The Democrats, but it could be both. That's the thing that Leo pointed out to me the other day, because he has reason to believe it is, and I do too. The truth of the matter is, Republicans could stop a lot of this. All right. But they're not. Why?
So when you're saying, I mean, of course you hear separation of children, that brings the southern border, all that kind of crap. That's what people.
No, that's not.
I know that's not.
No, that's not what I was talking about.
I know that's not what you mean,
Right.
but that's what people think you're saying. I think you're saying more separate, like the idea of like the Nazis kind of thing. Reporting your parents.
Exactly.
Right. I think there's definitely room for that in what's happening with this kind of authoritarian. I mean, look, cancel culture, a lot of cancel culture is about that, right? Let's turn in mommy and daddy. They're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, even look at what they're trying to do. Okay. What is one of the things that what is a purpose that the holidays serve? Because the holidays do serve a purpose.
I get where you're going. The fact that families are not able to get to, or we're being told not to get together because we're
quote unquote COVID fate.
That's right. Because of COVID, that we'd be irresponsible. We're spreading it, and we're gonna kill grandma. Right? We're gonna kill grandma.
Push her off the cliff, just like they used to show on TV.
That's Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan was pushing the grandma off the cliff.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna push grandma. You're gonna push grandma off the COVID cliff, pal.
But this is what they're looking to do. Okay, because one of the things that the holidays, the purpose that the holidays serve, is as far as our international well-being or our national well-being. One of the things the holidays serve is we reestablish our family ties. We strengthen them.
Absolutely.
We have a good time together. So years from now you could say, oh, remember on Christmas and this day when Uncle so-and-so did this?
That's right.
And everybody has a laugh and it's a family bonding thing.
That's right.
And what is one of the things that communists and all totalitarians always do is they break up the family.
Right. So when you looked at the Black Lives Matter stuff, right? They've since changed it, but at the time, one of the original, at least original, I mean, during the summer.
Changed.
No. I'm not saying that they have changed, but they pulled down the breaking up the nuclear family as one of their objectives.
Objectives only because they know people wouldn't think that's a good thing.
Right. They're out and out Marxists. So
exactly.
They can't get away with that stuff.
And they know what they can say and what they can't say in this country. They know what they can get away with.
I wish I had the charts because I've seen the charts that show their popularity. It was growing and then down after all the riots.
Because as time went on, blacks began to realize that these people aren't for us. As it came out who their leadership was and everything like that, blacks realized the last thing we need on top of everything else is communism.
I think a lot of that has to do with, the communism is one aspect of it. I think
it's the central aspect for BLM. Don't ever forget that.
But I think
nobody that's casually a socialist.
But I think one of the big things that changed hearts and minds, because this is really hearts and minds stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Was the defund the police crap. Because who does that disproportionately affect? It affects the poor black communities.
I live in a poor black community.
Right.
And I can assure you, all right, as much as they bitch, okay, the reality of the matter is they want those men in blue. They
absolutely.
Want them there. Okay, when Mayor de Blasio, who's probably the worst mayor in New York history, all right. David Dinkins died this week. But Dinkins, to be fair to him, Dinkins came in with the wrong agenda.
Yeah.
He took over a city that was already a mess.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was tied to people that wouldn't allow him to clean it up, like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson.
Right.
Okay. Dinkins, I don't think was a bad man. I just think he was very he was very misinformed. All right?
Yeah.
But de Blasio, on the other hand, is a bad man. Okay,
de Blasio's incompetent.
He's incompetent. He's a bad human being.
I mean, he's a socialist.
He absolutely is a socialist.
Some would say Nazi, right? Which goes back to our very first thing we talked about.
Circles around. Okay, maybe you want to call him a fascist, being that he's Italian. You know what I mean? Okay, but the point that I'm making is that this man.
By the way, but his name is William Wilhelm III, right? He's not. I mean, his mother was Italian.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
He took de Blasio. Why?
De Blasio was his mother's name, but his name is William Wilhelm III.
He's a kraut. He's a freaking Nazi. Good. All right.
No, we don't use that kind of language here. Yeah, I know so he was involved with a lot of communist stuff. I think he went down to Cuba.
Oh, I know. It was
it was another
fan of Fidel Castro. Big fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's your typical socialist. He came from a rich family. I think they had money, and he's not happy with the way things went because I guess they had too much. So he had to make it more difficult for everybody. Typical socialist garbage.
Exactly. and if you look at what's happening now, you look at in New York. Okay, throughout the Obama or throughout the Giuliani and the Bloomberg administrations, what did you have? You had stop and frisk.
Yeah.
Now I know the minorities don't like it. You know what? I don't care. Okay. Fact of the matter is, stop and frisk works. That's why the cops do it.
So stop and frisk.
Okay.
It morphed though. See what happened?
No. This is what happened. I'll tell you what happened.
All right.
What happened is this: stop and frisk worked.
Yeah.
Crime rates dropped because every banger before he went out at night knew there was a real good chance he'd get stopped and frisked.
Right.
So guess what he didn't do? He didn't bring his gun with him.
Right.
And guess what happened? Shootings went down. Murders went down. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I know. It's obvious, right?
And when de Blasio announced the end of stop and frisk, okay, they interviewed people on the street in Brooklyn.
Yep.
And you know what those people said?
What?
He didn't ask us. Why didn't he ask us?
It's so typical, right? They're because it's the look. It's all about the look. They want it to look like, oh, see, we're taking away this thing that the small minority of the minorities don't like. There was this.
But the reality is, most of the minorities who are living in these dangerous neighborhoods are saying it's a good thing the cops are there because there's less gunplay.
That's
Look
what
at
I'm
what's
saying.
happening in New York now. 2 cops got murdered the other day.
They're
just trying, or no, they didn't get.
They got shot.
They didn't die. They got shot. But the point that I'm making is, sorry about that. I don't want to go on a rant. That hurts our credibility. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, these 2 cops got shot just for helping somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I thought the cops were big badasses that didn't help anybody.
Yeah.
What I mean?
My
It's just
understanding.
not true. I've never had cross words with a New York cop.
Right.
As long as I didn't give him a hard time.
Well, look, the way I was taught is you don't give the cops a hard time.
Right.
If you get stopped, you're in a car, you move slowly, you put your hands on the wheel.
You do
before
what they
come.
tell you to.
Yeah, you try to get all your documents out before they come.
Mm-hmm.
You're respectful. You don't give them a hard time. I mean, honestly, and people know this. That a lot of the times, most of the stuff is because they're resisting arrest.
They're giving the cop a hard time. They don't understand it. Resisting arrest is a crime.
Yeah.
Not cooperating with the police is a crime.
Right. They're making a dangerous situation.
Got this idea that the cops are not allowed to come up and ask you for identification. That's utter nonsense. Yes, they are.
Right.
Okay.
But of course, you're not allowed to do that when you vote. You don't ask for identification.
Well, again, this is the utter nonsense. We're getting fed. Okay. Oh, blacks can't vote because they have to have ID. Oh, and it's too hard for a black man to go out and get ID? What, he can't do that? He's not capable of it?
No, it's just another piece of garbage, Tim. It's
another example. They pander to these minorities in order to dominate them.
So, look, I think we've been hitting hard on minorities during this whole thing. I want to talk a little bit more about the homeless thing, right? Because
sure.
How long you been living in shelters now?
It'll be, let's see, I've been in the system about 2 years.
2 years. So,
but this is not the first time; it's the second time.
Right.
First time I was in the system for about 6 months.
Yeah. So you have a lot of experience in the system. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what's it like in the shelter? I know right now in New York City, they've moved you guys into hotels, right?
Yeah.
But prior to that, what's the typical shelter like for people? Because, I think when most people think homeless, they see the people that are laying out on the street, laying in the subway. What is the typical, deal for the homeless? What's the life like?
Well, the food's terrible.
Right.
The staff treats you like garbage.
Right.
The vast majority of the staff have no business having those jobs.
Now, are they former homeless people, most of them?
Many of them come from the system, yes.
Yeah, you would think that they would treat it a little differently.
No, that's the thing. It's just like HRA, same thing. You go in the HRA, you get treated like crap. The vast majority of the people in HRA were once on HRA.
Right. So
okay, but they have no empathy whatsoever.
So
they treat you like a number.
So what's the daily life like? I mean, now let's talk before the hotel, before all that kind of stuff. You know
When
what's
I was when I was up at Phelan Place in the Bronx, it was weird for me because I was right around the corner from where I used to live.
yeah,
So I was in my old neighborhood again.
yeah.
All right, but now my conditions were different. I had to be home at 10 o'clock.
Right. So like again, what's the typical day like for like a typical homeless guy who's living in a shelter?
boredom.
But give me an example. Like like they kick you out a certain time.
No, they don't do that.
Okay.
They do kick you out of bed. Okay. The thing is, now that we're in the hotel, the rules are different.
Right. Pre-hotel though.
But when we were in the hotel, if you didn't have a note from your doctor,
yeah,
you had to be out of bed all day. You couldn't be in your room. You couldn't be, all day.
So, again, people have this notion, it's, like the emergency shelter, right? Where there's all these like chairs and beds and cots and everybody's in one open space. But you talk about having a room.
We had dorm rooms. We had dorm rooms.
So how many people to a room?
It varied in Phelan Place. They had some rooms that had like 6 guys. They had some rooms that had 5. I think there was one 4-guy room, but for the most part, the rooms were about 5 to 6 guys.
All right. So they kick you out of bed in the morning. They're providing you lunch. You got to go somewhere else. I mean, or breakfast.
No, there's lunch there, and if you work, you can get a bag lunch.
All right.
They'll give you like it's a sandwich and an apple and a juice.
That's another thing. Like, how many, like in your estimation, how many people actually work? Because I think it's a fairly large percentage.
And it depends on the shelter.
Yeah.
Different shelters, like for instance, Phelan Place is a working shelter.
All right.
So people in Phelan Place, some people do work. There are guys I know who have jobs.
All right.
You know what I mean? But I myself, if I'm deemed healthy enough, will get a job before I leave, I think.
Right.
All right. But the vast majority don't.
So
the vast majority, they basically are house hunting most of the time.
Right. So they give you lunch or they give you bag lunch if you're working.
Right.
Then
they provide you breakfast. They provide you dinner.
So it's just hanging out all day. I mean, is that the deal?
It's pretty much. I mean, there's not much else to do.
So it's just complete boredom, like you said.
There's nothing going on. I mean, the city's closed. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? You don't have money to spend.
Well, no, that's COVID times, right? Now, what about? Let's go back to pre-COVID because I think this is an anomaly.
Well, in the pre-COVID times, you could pretty much do anything you wanted if you had the money. If you had money and you wanted to go sit in a bar, you'd go sit in a bar. You had the money, you wanted to go, go to, do anything you want. So
okay, let's talk about money when you're homeless because I don't really know.
It varies from case to case.
So the government provides you a certain amount of money.
Well,
like you get a stipend of some sort.
If you are in the homeless shelter, okay, you have to open an HRA case.
All right.
You have to get welfare, basically. All right. Now, if you have money coming in, like right now, I'm getting my Social Security insurance.
Yeah.
Which is $783 a month.
Okay.
Since I'm getting that, I no longer qualify for welfare.
But how typical is that, right? Is that like the typical, like how many people are getting SSI versus how many people are just kind of on their own? Like
not that many.
So, I mean, another thing.
The vast majority, or I should say a very large percentage of the people that I know in the homeless shelter, have never really done anything in all their lives.
Yeah, is that so?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
my roommate in particular.
Is it like drugs? You think alcohol?
Alcohol. In my roommate's case, is alcohol. He's a drunk.
So would you say that's the majority of the cases of the people that have just been floating around their whole life?
I don't know if it's the majority, but it's a large percentage.
Yeah.
It's a significant. I would say it's at least 1/3.
So the image of the homeless guy on the street, what exactly is that? Are those the drug addicts? You think the people that have problems? They're getting kicked out of the shelters. They don't want to go to the shelters.
What it is if you're in the streets and you're not in a shelter, that's by your choice.
Yeah, so pretty much anyone wants to be in a shelter, you can.
Out of the shelter. The only thing they can do is transfer you.
And you would say that's pretty much just New York?
New York's the only city that has any kind of infrastructure for this at all. No city, no other place does.
It's interesting, right? It's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm sorry that you've been going through this system, but it's, you're getting to see a certain aspect of society that's out there and what exists.
I've seen, but yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, I had a bad experience. Yeah, it was great. Thanks.
we're not going to get into the other stuff, like that may be good or bad, but it is, it's an interesting, it adds color to your life.
Well, that it does. My life is just full of texture, ain't no doubt. I mean, I remember my buddy Tom, who's been a good deal more successful in life, when he said to me, Tim, at least your life hasn't been boring.
But listen, you do have, it's Thanksgiving. You have things to be thankful for in your life.
Of course I do. Hey, listen, I've always been a glass half full guy. You ask anybody who knows me, that's always been me.
Right.
So
you see now, let's tie it back. So I think we should start wrapping this thing up. But right. I know there's still so much to talk about, right? I feel like we scratched the surface of stuff.
We can always do this again.
Absolutely.
Matt, no problem.
What do you think about? Let's think about the homeless system and government taking care of you, and the idea of the people that think socialism is such a great thing. I think you get a taste of socialism even more so being in a homeless shelter, I would guess. I mean, you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is, people look at me. Okay, the one thing that homeless people get is we get treated badly by most everybody.
Yeah.
All right. If you're recognized as a homeless person, now I don't know if I get recognized as much as, like, say, my roommate does.
Yeah.
Because I ain't black.
All right. Yeah, but what is that? I mean, being black is not enough to be homeless.
No. But most people look at a white guy, and I keep myself clean. I keep myself, my hair is a little crazy right now, but I generally, I take a shower on a regular basis. Yeah. I have clean clothes. I don't look like a bum.
Right.
Okay. But in and around the shelter, like, because basically we've taken over this neighborhood,
right?
Because they put us in a bunch of hotels in the Long Island City area,
right?
And we are looked at, askance.
Yeah.
You walk in the store, they got their eyes on you.
Yeah.
They want to make sure you ain't trying to lift anything or anything like that. I don't do that, of course, but I know people who do.
Yeah, well, in some of the cities around the country, you can get away with it. I think, I don't know the limits. It was something like $1,200 you can steal in, like, San Francisco before they'll do anything about it. Yeah, I know it's crazy stuff, right?
But look at the mess. Okay, look at the mess that San Francisco has become.
Yeah.
Okay, I visited San Francisco back when I first went to visit Hawaii.
Right.
I spent time in San Francisco a few days on the way and a few days on the way back. I did layovers because I wanted to see San Francisco. I wanted to hang out there. And it was an absolutely beautiful city.
Right.
It's one of the nicest places I've ever been. I'd love San Francisco. I would live there in a second.
Right.
Okay. Even though I don't agree with their politics.
I love San Francisco too.
It's a beautiful town.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the most beautiful towns. The Golden Gate Bridge,
absolutely.
The Bay is just gorgeous.
Oh yeah, going down to the waterfront. You see that big wheel from the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah.
All right. And I've done all that. Ride the cable car, all that. Right. And it was,
and the weather too.
Oh, the weather is nice because it doesn't get as cold there as it gets here.
Absolutely.
But the fact is, what has become of that city? It's an utter nightmare now. Yeah. My buddy Tom was there. He lived in California for 12 years. He still has a lot of friends and connections out there.
Well, Tim, it's the Democrat. It's like the perfection of Democrat. It's like very rich, people that are we would call the elites, right? People working tech, making tons of money, and the very poor, like all together in this one place. And I think what's happening is there's an erosion of middle class. But in general, that's true of the country.
In general, that's true. But also what you have to keep in mind is out in California, they have no infrastructure for the homeless.
Yeah.
Okay. Yet they have a huge influx of homeless all the time.
Right, so I think there we're talking more street homeless.
Well, these are street homeless. When you're coming up from Mexico and you don't have a place to live, you know where you're living? You're living in a tent city. That's what happens. Remember back during the 30s, you always heard about the Hoovervilles. Yeah. Where all the people that were knocked out of work by the Depression, they all built little shacks and everything like that and gathered in one place. And what happened in those places? Trouble.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is what's happening in San Francisco and L.A. and the mayor of L.A. and the governor of San Francisco, the governor of California, have opened up the state. They've said to the illegals, "Come here, we'll take care of you. No worries."
Yeah, I mean, it really makes no sense. I mean, this is part of the whole Trump platform, right? And part of why he's so evil the way he treated the illegal aliens that came here. Oh, wait, no, did I say alien? I don't think I'm not allowed to say that, right?
But remember this, okay? The separation of children at the borders from their parents is not actual separation of children and parents.
I know. Most of them are with the coyotes.
That's right. Okay? And it's doing the right thing. And you would think the Democrats would be all for that.
Would you? I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think they'd be
the little kids.
Yeah, no, they're full of crap mostly. They just want the image.
To be honest with you, I have no problem with these poor little Mexican kids. Mm-hmm. I say we keep them and help them because they deserve it.
Right.
All right. Because they're innocents. Right. They didn't do anything to deserve this. They got drawn into it.
Right. Well, okay. I mean, look, for the most part, the parents are trying to help out their families. They're trying to help their kids.
Get their kid a better life than they could have in Mexico. But you know what? My personal belief is this. The United States, for all intents and purposes, owns Mexico.
And look, it's not Mexico anyway, right? No. They're just streaming through Mexico from Guatemala and other parts of Central.
Mexico is a corridor.
Right.
But the interesting thing about Mexico, when everybody was bitching about Trump building the wall between the United States and Mexico, between Mexico and Guatemala, you know what they have?
What?
A wall.
I know.
Okay. You know why?
Or at least a fence,
because the Mexicans don't want Guatemalans coming into Mexico. Okay.
By the way, I want to say right here and now that we do not support racism in any way, manner, or form.
Listen. Trump doesn't have anything against Mexicans.
Yeah.
Okay. This is one of the lies that the Democrats have spewed.
Right.
Trump has no problem with Mexicans as long as they are legal. He had a Mexican cook in the White House.
Yeah, I saw that burrito bowl he had, or that taco bowl.
There you go. All right. Hey, he likes a little Mexican food.
Technically, that's Tex-Mex.
Trump probably likes to go to Taco Bell. All right. That's the reality of it. Okay. It's all nonsense.
Yeah. This stuff is. The
president of the United States is supposed to look out for the interest of the United States.
Right.
Okay. We worry about the world afterwards. Okay? The United States first.
Yeah, okay? And again,
because you know what? If the United States is healthy, so is the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's interesting again that we see this shift away from, and again, Matt is saying, no, we should get rid of America first. America first is a bad idea.
Nonsense.
I think a lot of their philosophy is that if we take care of the external stuff, that you take care of the problems over there. If the problems over there are solved, they're not going to come here. That's the same philosophy we had in the Middle East, right?
Well, it is.
And now, how long are we?
For us, it's work.
Yeah, and how long are we there now? 19 years? Almost 20 years that we've been over in the Middle East.
Well, the reality is Afghanistan was a mistake. All right, I'll be the first.
Iraq was a mistake.
I don't think Iraq was a mistake. I think the way we handled it was a mistake.
No,
okay, Iraq as a nation doesn't exist. Iraq as a nation is a conglomeration.
I'd say that's more Afghanistan for sure.
No. Afghanistan as a nation has never existed.
Okay, I'll go with you on that.
That's the truth.
Right.
Okay. The fact of the matter is, those Muslims that live in the hills of Afghanistan and murder the victims of rape and all that other kind of nonsense.
Right.
Those people are animals. They want to live that way. They've chosen to live that way, and they've lived that way.
I'm going to say here, they're not animals. They're people.
They've lived that way for thousands of years.
Right.
And great empires, time and again, have tried to suppress them. The Russians tried it. The British tried it. Now the Americans are trying it.
Yeah.
And guess what? They all failed. Okay? Because this is the life that those people want. So my attitude is, you know what, Afghans? You can have whatever life you want. You just ain't exporting it. You ain't bringing it here.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a void that Al-Qaeda, they were able to exploit. I mean, really, now we'll go in this circle. Really, I mean, it was the Saudis, right? It was the Saudis that did 9/11. Maybe not the Saudi. I mean,
not the Saudi government, but it was Saudi people.
That's right. It was the Saudi people, Hamas, the majority.
Well, the truth of the matter is, most of the funny thing I always got a kick out of about 9/11, and it's hard to get a laugh out of 9/11, but in this case, I kind of do. In the fact that the only ones who knew that it was a one-way trip were the guys who knew how to fly the planes.
It is interesting.
The other guys thought they were going to take these planes and go land in an airport somewhere and, have a standoff a la Beirut.
Right. That's why they were like, oh, they were telling the people, don't worry, just don't fight us.
Right,
Everything will be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then when those guys in the last flight over Pennsylvania, when they realized that their plane was headed for Washington,
Right.
when it wasn't supposed to be headed for Washington.
Right.
Okay. And they realized there was trouble, and that was where you had the let's roll thing.
Yeah.
And they killed themselves, but at least they didn't crash into the White House.
Right. So, Tim, I think we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay.
I think we have some other meeting that we need to join into.
I understand.
And I want to thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here. Happy to come back anytime.
All right. And if you like our show, everybody, please subscribe to our channel and leave any comments you might have and give us a like. All right, Tim.
All right. Have a good day. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Oh, you're going to see this after that.